Most people compare ISAs and pensions in a very simple way. ISAs are tax-free on the way in and tax-free on the way out. SIPPs get tax relief on the way in, but are taxed when you take the money out. And on paper, the SIPP often looks like the obvious winner. But I think there is something missing from that comparison, the detail that changes everything. It's time. Most of these comparisons assume something very specific, that you'll retire at the point where you can actually use the tax system efficiently. But for a lot of people, that doesn't happen in a clean or predictable way. You might retire later than expected, you might keep some income coming in, or you might not structure the withdrawals in a tax efficient way at all. And this is where things get interesting, because the SIPP tax advantage isn't just the tax relief going in. It's also about how and when you take the money out. With a SIPP, you usually get the relief when you contribute. Then later in life, you can withdraw the money, often with a 25% tax-free lump sum. The rest is then taxed as income. With an ISA, it's simpler. No tax relief going in, but also no tax when you take it out. No rules about timing, no restrictions on withdrawals, just flexibility. And that leads to a key question I keep coming back to. Is the SIPP advantage actually guaranteed, or does it depend heavily on when you retire? Because if you retire early, you can often structure withdrawals in a very tax efficient way. You can potentially use your personal allowance each year. You can control your income and you can optimize the timing. But if you retire later or continue working part-time or already have other income streams, then the flexibility starts to shrink and the tax advantage is less clear-cut. It's not gone, it's just less obvious. So the real comparison might not be ISA versus SIPP, which is better. It might be something closer to this. When will I actually be in a position to use the money efficiently? Because a SIPP isn't just a tax wrapper, it's also a timing system. And that timing matters more than most people realise. Saving accounts sit at one end of the spectrum. Simple, accessible, low return, but no complexity. ISAs sit in the middle, flexible, tax-free, still accessible. And SIPPs are at the other end. Powerful tax incentives, but locked behind time, rules, and assumptions about your future. And that's really the trade-off. Not just tax efficiency, but control versus constraint. Flexibility versus optimization. And the more I look at it, the more I think retirement planning isn't about picking the best account. It's about trying to match your money today with the version of your life that hasn't happened yet. And that's the part that most people don't fully think about, because it's hard to plan for a future version of yourself that doesn't feel real yet. Recently, I had a conversation with a friend who'd never really thought about investing or retirement planning before. He had some money sitting in premium bonds, there's nothing unusual there, and he asked a pretty simple question: what do you actually do with your money? But what stood out to me wasn't the investing part, it was the concern underneath the question. What mattered most to him was access, availability, the what if scenario. What if something happens? What if I need the money? What if life changes? And honestly, I think that's how a lot of people think. Not in spreadsheets, in uncertainty. So we started talking through different options, saving accounts, ISAs, SIPPs. And generally speaking, the SIPP is often seen as the first bucket to fill because of tax relief, especially if you're a high tax rate payer. On paper, it can look incredibly efficient. But during the conversation, I realised something important. The value of the tax relief depends heavily on how your future actually unfolds. Because yes, technically, you can access a SIPP before the state pension age. It's currently around 10 years. But if you're still working when you start withdrawing from it, Your salary may already be using most, if not all, of your personal allowance, which means your pension withdrawals start getting taxed on top. So the big tax advantage people imagine on the way in can end up looking far less dramatic on the way out, especially if retirement isn't early, or flexible, or strategically planned. When he thought about it from that perspective, flexibility mattered more to him than the upfront tax relief. Not because the SIPP was bad, but because the ISA matched his psychology better. Flexible access, no future tax uncertainty, no dependency on the specific retirement timeline. And I think that's something that people often miss in financial discussions. The mathematically optimal choice and the psychology comfortable choice are not always the same thing. And if a strategy makes someone anxious, trapped, or uncertain, there's a good chance they won't stick to it anyway. If you found this video helpful or informative, it'd be a great help if you can give it a thumbs up and maybe write a comment with any thoughts, as this is how the algorithm judges engagement. Thank you for your view.